Hello, Matt. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about your job process. Matt is a fantastic project manager and he has tackled his job process in a really organised way that from his skills as a project manager. So I'm just going to take you over to Matt to explain a little bit more.
Hello. Hi, Helen. Yeah, so over the last few months, really, I've made sure that I can apply some of my skills as a project manager into the process of my job search. I think there's quite a few benefits to this. And it's also given me a chance to really use my skills almost in the same way that I would do within a role. So doing this has really meant I can structure specific days, I can plan my diary, and I can also really recognize when I've achieved things. I mean, the ultimate goal is obviously to get a job. That's, that's the kind of headline of this project. But really, you've got to find ways to make sure you're achieving what you want to achieve on a daily basis, almost on an hourly basis if you need to work that way. So a lot of the ways I've structured things means day by day I'm consistently achieving things, and then I'm logging them and making sure I follow anything up that I need to, and really managing all of the sort of the interactions that need to happen. Often when, for example, you apply for a role, you then need to follow it up, or you then need to research a company sufficiently for the interview. So there's all of those activities that need to go on in the background, and I think it becomes more manageable when you structure that in. So you allow yourself a window to research a company and think about questions to ask at the interview and all of those things. But I think putting it all on a document or on a spreadsheet or something like that means that you really see the volume of work that you're doing in finding a job, and you can allow yourself credit for what you're doing, because you've got to give yourself goals and rewards along the way.
So talk to me about your background, Matt. So where have you come from?
So I've been a project manager with Ricardo the last 6 years, and then Ricardo have recently struggled, as a lot of engineering companies have, during the pandemic. So I came out of Ricardo earlier this year because they had to make quite a few rounds of redundancies. And I suppose at Ricardo, and also previously in my career, I've always been interested in developing products and really working with teams. So I think the biggest kick I get is sort of bringing a team together, making it work, and interacting with people and being a part of that team, to get to a successful sort of endpoint. Really, I think I've been very lucky to work with a lot of very clever people, very engaging people, and they're the people who I've been kind enough to speak to along this journey of job searching, and really use and leverage in terms of my contacts. So that's something I think we're going to go on to a little bit later. But
so talk to me about, so you've kind of talked around your job process structure. So talk to me about how you've approached it. What have you done to organize yourself? Because it can be really disjointed when you lose your job. You don't know, you don't really know what you're doing. You don't know where the next role is necessarily going to come from. And it's kind of keeping yourself on the straight and narrow to achieve something every day. How have you gone about that?
I suppose the first steps was thinking about what you've got and what you're offering, and also and what you want to really go and do. So I spent a lot of time before I really applied for that many roles, getting my CV strong, getting my LinkedIn profile to be strong, and seeking help from others to get assistance on that where I felt I needed to. And then from there I started thinking about the different methods for finding a job. There's obviously, the traditional method is you send your CV and a covering letter by post, you know, you get invited to interview, you get an offer, and you take the job. But I think that's the old model. You know, I think now there's so many other ways. That's still a valid channel, but there's different channels out there now. So I think for me it was recognizing that there's all these different methods, and then starting to get them down as a process and managing them individually. So, you know, just to highlight them, there's the traditional application process, there's jobs you might see online, there's recruitment agencies you might already know and work with, there's networking and accessing the hidden jobs market, and you know, and I suppose there's also like canvassing and a whole bunch of others. But I say there's sort of 4 or 5 main channels that you need to monitor and, you know, and tend to, you know, via whatever tool you come up with, really. So I came up with a spreadsheet that integrates all of these things and keeps an eye also on companies I like as well. But it allows me to maintain those relationships with people. I think the biggest thing for me is I've used my network of people I know, previous bosses, previous people I've worked really well with, you know, sort of, and I've also tried to access people who I might know through a friend. So, you know, it's a chance to extend your network as well, which is really nice. And that's a good thing to have, you know, in any circumstance, really, beyond even seeking out a new role. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a flavor, an idea of the spreadsheet that I've come up with, and the sort of the structure that it then gives you as a result.
So how do you manage that? So on a weekly basis, what do you do?
So on a weekly basis, I at a basic level, I have a task list that I've taken out from my spreadsheet, my main spreadsheet, which has all of the 5 things I talked about in, and that will just have a to-do list. So that, you know, it might be, one thing might be apply for that role, another thing might be chase up that recruitment agency who was going to put you up for a different role, or call back a contact that you haven't spoken to in 3 months where things were good for them, you know, business wise, and they were expanding. So maybe now they're in a position to hire someone, even part-time, you know, or maybe you can offer some sort of problem solving, troubleshooting type activities. So it's that's just a flavor really of what I'm doing, but it's all about that cadence. It's all about chasing people up, bringing them back, and being in control of it rather than waiting for these things to happen.
I think what I've been most impressed with you is your proactivity, and the structure has really helped you stay on top of all of it. So, you know, and I know that you're really happy to share your spreadsheet. So if anyone wants that information, they can either contact myself or contact Matt directly as well, because we're really happy we kind of want to bring this out to people to make their job search a lot easier. And, you know, it doesn't always, spreadsheets aren't always going to resonate, but the way that you organize and how you keep on top of things can be done in other ways as well. But what I would say is, how do you, say you're not working, how do you motivate yourself to keep your activity levels going? So the organization is great, but how do you kind of get up every day and think, right, I'm going to keep on it every day?
I think it's always a bonus if you've got live leads, if you've got things where there's potential for jobs. That's always nice. I've been really lucky that there's things that I've got going on where there's a real incentive to chase them, because ultimately they might lead to an offer. But I think it's having that task list and being realistic about what you can do. It's like in any context, you know, you've got to be realistic about your goals for that particular day or week, and realistic about how much time you've got. I mean, obviously with what's going on at the moment in the world, you know, a lot more people have had their children at home. Everyone has family issues or family things to deal with. I've got a young family that, let's say, demands a reasonable amount of my time. So it's about being realistic and organizing your diary as such. So if you, in the mornings, if you can only spare, I don't know, say 9 o'clock till 11 o'clock, then chunking up your time that way and allowing yourself to come away, you know, having a designated space to do it like you would in a job, and coming away from that, and so then from there you find time for the other things that you need to do as a human being, really, or as a member of a family, or whatever your other commitments are outside of finding a role.
What else have you found really helpful to you in galvanizing your job search and supporting you?
I think LinkedIn has been a big factor in all of this. I've used LinkedIn to seek out recruiters, to interact with others who I previously didn't know. So I've spoken to lots of other PMs who are in the same situation, and really, you know, we're sort of cross-pollinated in terms of ideas and talked about, you know, how difficult it is at the moment, but also how you overcome that, and how you kind of take breaks when you need to, and allow yourself to have days off, and you know, I suppose be disciplined really with it, but understand yourself and know when you need to take some time off. You know, I've definitely had days where I haven't been productive, so I've, you know, written them off and gone and done something else, and then gone back the next day with more enthusiasm because I've allowed myself that break. You know, it's important to take breaks, as you would do at work. You'd have a coffee break at work, so, you know, call up someone on Zoom and do it.
I think it's also not feeling guilty, isn't it? And it's not
Yeah.
feeling guilty about things. But I know you've also used, like, we're doing work together from a coaching perspective, and I know you've sought other people to support you, so that you've got not just your processes, but also a really strong support network that you tap into and you regularly speak to mean that it keeps you moving. But also on the days where you don't feel particularly motivated, you know that you've got that backup, that support.
Yeah, and I suppose it's maintaining those relationships around you, where, you know, I've got a nice amount of people now who are working that I know, and a good amount of people who are in my situation that I know. And, you know, between speaking to those people, you know, you can empathize and you can share that sort of, those processes really, and that helps you in turn to move forward and reinvigorate you to carry on, you know. But there's a lot of, you know, there are a lot of advantages, and I think you've got to change your own narrative to a certain degree, because, you know, there's a lot of advantages to this time, because you can recharge and you can, you know, think about what you want to do next, and genuinely use it as an opportunity to go off and change direction if you want to, and do something that you know, that are in, it does line up better with your values, really. I think that's the key thing. So you've got ample time to really think about what you want to do, not just apply for another job that's identical to what you did do.
And how do you think you've approached your job search differently to maybe a job search you've done in the past?
I think I've spent more time preparing, and then that's led me to be more targeted about the roles that I go for. So rather than, you know, treat it as a numbers game and apply to everything with the one-click apply that you can do on certain sites, I've thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make sure I know that I've got a good chance at the roles I apply for, because they're a good fit for various reasons, and you've got the experience, and also, you know, do your prep and call people up, you know, interact with them on LinkedIn first before you apply, you know, prime them up and differentiate yourself. So that not only helps your application, but it helps that person on the other end be more willing to employ you, because they'll warm to you more. You know, they'll think, oh yeah, I'm waiting for Matt's application to come in, and you're not just another CV, because CVs are pretty cold clinical documents at times. So you want to break through that and offer something different, because ultimately you'll be there as a person. So yeah, I think you've got a chance to already put yourself, you know, above other candidates by being more proactive. That's what it boils down to.
And what about the successes you've had? So with your process and your structured way of doing things and your very proactive approach to connecting with people and, you know, really creating some opportunities for yourself, what kind of successes have you had with that?
Yeah, because I suppose early on, I had successes where I got interviews pretty quickly. So, and that in itself was a really good process for me to practice, you know, in a live environment. So even though, you know, I didn't get offered the roles, I learned a lot about how I answer the questions, and also about how interviews might be conducted. And all the time, I think you're learning and replanning for the next one. But you know, I think in terms of sort of applications versus interviews, my hit rate's been quite high, which shows that, you know, I'm at least getting a return on my application process. I've had very few applications where nothing's happened, you know, no one's come back to me. And that, I think that's really rewarding, to know that you've got a shot. You know, if you get an interview at a company, it's people want to give you a chance. So you know that your CV is good. You know you're applying in the right sort of way. You know you've got people on the inside of those companies, let's say, who want you to get into that role. But every interview I've had so far, of the half a dozen or so interviews, has come from, ultimately, from networking and from the hidden jobs market. So I'd say it's always great to leverage your contacts.
I think you've really uncovered some opportunities through making those connections. And the other thing I would say is, from our discussions, I would say at least about 80% of what you're putting out there results in some kind of conversation, if not a potential role in the future, which is high. You know, a lot of people put out hundreds of job applications and never get anywhere with them. So your approach obviously works, because you're being very specific about what you're going after and who you're connecting with and who you're speaking to. And, you know, it's clearly working for you.
Yeah, and it's also an opportunity to learn about, assuming you want to stay in your locality and in your location, and you don't want to relocate, then you're learning about companies you might never even have been aware of, in, you know, who are around the corner. I've found companies sort of 10, 15 miles away that I never even knew about, that are doing amazing things. So yeah, it's really good that way as well. And I suppose that goes back to the spreadsheet and having an element where you are searching for companies purely on locality, and researching them, and then thinking, oh, that's a really cool company, you know, online. It looks like I agree with what they're doing. I feel passionate about what they're doing, and you sort of go down that route as well.
On the last note, what are your top tips for? So we talked a lot about how your processes worked, but I just thought, let's gather that all together and talk about like your top tips for job searching in this current tricky climate.
Okay. I think there's loads to talk about, but I think yeah, give yourself a structure, and take breaks. You know, make sure you find time for other things in your life, because if you were working, you'd find time for those other things. So, you know, make sure you, I don't know, spend an amount of hours a week that you're happy with, but find time for your family, find time for your hobbies and your fitness, and take care of yourself, because it's a brutal market, and you've got to, you know, stay strong. So yeah, find time for those other things, but be structured, as we've said. You know, build a spreadsheet, or do a big map on the wall, you know, of how you're going about the process. And if you're not process driven, Another tip is get help. You know, you can't do it on your own. You've got to buddy up with people or find a community. I've joined an online community and it's been brilliant because you share tips and you think about things, you know, people tell you things you would have never thought about. So buddy up with like-minded sort of job seekers. Then leverage your network. That's been massive for me. You've got to talk to people that you know that are in your field of expertise, your industry, and as a nice byproduct, you know, you get to speak to people you haven't spoken to for years and learn about what they're doing, and you just, you know, you make all those calls that you probably never would have made if you were still working, but you get to, you know, call up your old boss from 5 years ago and he might well know a company, you know, down near you that is doing some cool stuff. Like that's what's happened to me and that's one of my leads. So, you know, you don't know where those kind of avenues are going to take you, which is exciting. So do it. Like, be proactive, you know, do the things that push you out of your comfort zone. That's what it's part of. Like, it's tough. Like, you got to go easy on yourself because it's tough out there right now, but you'll learn a lot. You'll do a lot of interesting things, but you've got to be prepared to put yourself out there. And I guess that the other thing I didn't mention right at the top was, you know, get your CV as good as it can be, and your LinkedIn, because everyone looks at that now. And get help if you need to with any of these things. Like, it's in any context. You know, your family and the people around you, your friends, will support you in doing this, but there's so many experts like Helen and good people that on LinkedIn that want to help you, and some even help you for free. You know, there's amazing people out there. So don't be afraid to ask, because I've I've sent messages to people on there that I didn't know, had no relationship with. You know, there was no incentive for them to help me, and I've been amazed by how people have helped me. So yeah, I'd say just don't be afraid to put yourself out there, really, because that's how you're going to get a job. If you sit there and apply for jobs, it's not going to happen. You've got to be proactive, and you've got to have all these different channels. But if you don't enjoy the discipline and the structure, then get some help from someone who does, and then you'll get there, and you will find a job, and along the way you'll reward yourself for doing good stuff, because every call you make, every application you do, every coffee you have over Zoom that might seem like nothing, it's all getting you towards that job. So reward yourself for those small things that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Matt. Have you got anything else to add before we go?
No, that's it. I mean, I'm happy to share the spreadsheet or talk about it to people, because I definitely don't have all the answers. I'm just in it. I'm just doing it as a person. And, you know, I've only arrived at this place because I've been doing it for 6 months, and I've found all these great resources on LinkedIn. I've had a great bunch of people, family and friends, who've helped me. And, you know, it's I've been on a journey. It's mentally draining for sure, and I think you've got to accept that you're going to have good days and bad days, and if you need to, like, talk to someone. Don't suffer alone, because it's tough. I've had some tough times, and, you know, I've got some help, and I'm a lot better for it. So it's, you know, it's a sign of strength to know when you need help, not weakness. So yeah, I'm happy to speak to people about the spreadsheet, and yeah, happy to make new connections on LinkedIn. So yeah, I'm excited to see how it's received.
Thank you so much, Matt. It was an idea of mine, and Matt's gone very much along with it, so I really appreciate it. And we're both not super video experts, so it's been with trepidation that we've decided to do this, but we felt it was really important. We run a career coaching side of what we do, and I'm basically teaching people how to recruit themselves. So, you know, this is the work that Matt and I have been doing with each other, and you know, it's really powerful, and it does get results, you know, in the long run. And you know, it keeps you kind of on the straight and narrow when you're looking for work. So I really appreciate Matt kind of talking through his process, because I've been really inspired by his structure and organisation and just keeping himself going through all of this. And it is slow, so some of the opportunities that Matt's been talking about are still bubbling along, but they've taken weeks and weeks and weeks, and some of them months to come to, you know, even face-to-face meetings. So I would say my tips are patience and perseverance, because, you know, it's a long game at the moment. You know, even from a recruitment perspective, people are not making quick decisions. They are making very considered, long decisions. So it is just keeping everything moving and keeping yourself motivated, and also realizing that whatever you do now is completely a basis for your future career and job searches in the future. So, but thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate it. And we'll leave you here.
Excellent. Yep. Happy to field any questions. Thanks very much for your time, Helen.